I know you are out there. You're listening. You're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I can't see the future. I'm not here to tell you how this is going to end. I'm here to tell you how this is going to begin. I'm going to start this broadcast, and when I do, I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. A world without controls and boundaries. A world where anything is possible. The following interview takes place in May of 2015, 14 months before the murder of DNC staffer Seth Rich.
You tweeted that you were going to be Hillary's worst nightmare in 2016. How so?
Well, I have to say it's probably more Julian. But I'm aware of some of the things that are going to be roadblocks for her. So, you know, if I can provide some transparency with these people and make them part of what the Internet Party stands for, then, you know, I will be happy to do that.
You're saying Julian Assange is going to be Hillary's worst nightmare in 2016?
I think so, yeah.
The man you just heard speak is internet entrepreneur and international fugitive KimDotCom. Let's take a look at who KimDotCom is.
It's really like a Hollywood script. That's how I see it. This whole thing is a live movie that's playing out for like 4.5 years already. And I'm the main act.
Top story this hour, New Zealand is at the centre of one of the world's biggest internet piracy investigations.
Breach of copyright offences in the United States, money laundering.
I was a hacker. The hackers were wizards.
Claimed that he had hacked into the Pentagon.
All my life I've been a little bit ahead of what everyone else was doing.
Mega Upload was among the innovators of cloud services. It was probably the largest pirate cyberlocker that existed in the world.
There were tens of millions of dollars coming in.
Some say he's a criminal mastermind, others an online innovator. But he has to be the most wanted man online.
He's living in this huge mansion with all these cars, living this high life. You know, to them, he was doing that with their money. You get in between America and its money, and you're going to have big problems.
Gates are open.
I think that the message is clear.
Rotated target. Safe forever.
Don't mess with the United States on copyright issues.
It's quite interesting that a lobby group can get the White House to move with military force.
I think the raid really got to me. We were really happy before.
We need to come up with a mechanism to protect our jobs and protect the intellectual property.
Kim's legal team would argue that they're no different than any other cloud storage service.
There's no great conspiracy. The facts are that .com is someone the United States thinks they've broken the law.
We can make these Hollywood studios happy so they will shoot more movies here. And on top of that, we can please the White House because on the highest levels, they wanted me shut down.
Even in the face of these huge legal battles, he likes to taunt the U.S. government.
He is parasiting. He is sucking the blood out of the artist.
Shutting down the internet.
Until we know the truth.
Why are you turning red, Prime Minister? I'm not. This is the largest copyright case that our has ever seen.
It's fucking huge, man!
As you can see, KimDotCom is a very successful and very controversial internet entrepreneur and international fugitive. Before we look more into his story, let's review how we got to this point. In July of 2016, DNC staffer Seth Rich, at only 27 years old, was shot twice in the back and left for dead. When police arrived, Rich was found with his money, his wallet, and his watch still on his person. In spite of that, police ruled his death an armed robbery gone wrong. Just 10 days after his death, WikiLeaks released the DNC leaks, which included over 20,000 emails and 8,000 internal memos and documents from the DNC. As a result, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was forced to resign as the head of the DNC on the eve of the Democratic National Convention. The emails had showed that the DNC favored Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders during the 2016 presidential primary. Shortly after that, WikiLeaks founder and CEO Julian Assange went on Dutch television and implied that Seth Rich had been murdered due to his connections to WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks offered a $20,000 reward for anyone who could provide information leading to the conviction in the murder of 27-year-old DNC staffer Seth Rich. 8 months later, Robin Young, a Playboy model from the 1980s, released her private direct messages to WikiLeaks. They were direct messages between herself and alleged Russian hacker Guccifer 2.0. The two parties had engaged in a somewhat intimate relationship over the internet. The direct messages showed, that Guccifer 2.0 told Robin Young that Seth Rich was the WikiLeaks source. Since these revelations, really from the beginning of Seth Rich's murder, the Rich family has been surrounded by shady characters. Brad Bowman, DNC crisis manager, was quickly assigned to the Seth Rich murder investigation. Jack Berkman, powerful Republican lobbyist, injected himself into the investigation with a $100,000 reward. He made some interesting comments regarding the Russians being behind the murder. We can only speculate what his motives might be. Ed Batowski, a Texas businessman, offered to help the family and paid for private investigator Rod Wheeler to work on the investigation. On May 16th, Rod Wheeler would go on Fox News, and he would proclaim that a source within the FBI told him that they do have proof that Seth Rich was in fact the DNC WikiLeaks source. As a result, the mainstream media would finally start to cover Seth Rich, and Sean Hannity would bravely go out on an island and really push for answers in the Seth Rich murder investigation. Before we get into that, let's take a deeper look into internet entrepreneur and international fugitive KimDotCom.
KimDotCom was spied on illegally. What KimDotCom ran is just a service that's like a post office. He was the post office it was being mailed through. Why do you shut down the post office thinking that's where the problem is?
KimDotCom is a larger-than-life internet entrepreneur who has become increasingly controversial within the past 2 years. Kim is a high-rolling businessman who made a reported $175 million off of a website called Mega Upload, a service that provided a fast and simple way to transmit large files over the internet. Unfortunately for Kim, the US government, the New Zealand government, and even Hollywood alleged that the website was being used for criminal purposes. His house was raided just 1 day after SOPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act, died in the US Congress. 1 year after the raid, his assets are still frozen, and he is still under house arrest.
As a result of the raid on KimDotCom's mansion and the confiscation of his assets, KimDotCom would start his own political party.
Just outside New Zealand's largest city, Auckland, is the sprawling estate of an internet mogul. It's where German-born KimDotCom spends his time devising new ways to make money online, and now ways to enter New Zealand politics. He set up his own party called the Internet Party to contest the general election later in the year.
The idea was born out of the injustice around my case, right? The raid, the illegal spying, the destruction of my business, my internet website.
.com, who was born Kim Schmitz, is wanted in the United States, where he's accused of copyright infringement, charges that could bring a sentence of up to 20 years in jail. US authorities say by hosting illegally copied material, his site, Mega Upload, cost US studios and record companies $500 million.
You need to understand that what they are alleging is that I am responsible for the action of third parties. That's like saying, hey, you YouTube executive, you should go to jail because people are uploading pirated movies to YouTube.
US officials are seeking his extradition in a hearing to take place in July. The irony of KimDotCom's party contesting the election is that he may not even be here when the vote takes place in September. It was just over 2 years ago that the New Zealand police raided his house and arrested him at the request of the United States FBI. It was a spectacular raid, but it happened after New Zealand intelligence officers gathered information illegally, something the Prime Minister apologised for. Now free on bail, .com says he's setting up his own party to promote internet freedom.
As we discussed earlier, KimDotCom really got involved in the Seth Rich murder after private investigator Rod Wheeler had gone on Fox News and proclaimed that a source within the FBI told him that Seth Rich was in fact in contact with WikiLeaks. Let's take a look at that interview.
The police department nor the FBI has been forthcoming. They haven't been cooperating at all. I believe that the answer to solving his death lies on that computer, which I believe is either at the police department or either at the FBI. I've been told both.
But you have sources at the FBI saying that there is information
For
that
sure.
could link Seth Rich to WikiLeaks?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's confirmed. Actually, I have a source inside the police department that has looked at me straight in the eye and said, Rod, we were told to stand down in this case, and I can't share any information with you. Now, that's highly unusual for a murder investigation, especially from a police department. Again, I don't think it comes from the chief's office, but I do believe there is a correlation between the mayor's office and the DNC, and that's the information that's going to come out tomorrow.
One day later, an anonymous source, which I would never advise you to take as fact, went on Fox News and did corroborate Rod Wheeler's claims. There would be a major backlash and Rod Wheeler would do some backtracking, but he would go on Sean Hannity's show to clarify his remarks a few days later.
I guess my question is, when you look at the timeline of this, and 12 days after he was killed, it shows up on WikiLeaks, what did you discover in terms of the contacts with WikiLeaks?
Right. Well, that's an excellent question. And let me clear that up right now, exactly what it was that I found. Now, I have never seen the emails myself directly. I haven't even seen the computer that Seth Rich used. Here's the problem with all of this. I don't even know where the computer is. I checked with the police department. They said they don't know where the computer is. And the FBI, they say they don't have the computer. Now, where did this information come from in terms of knowing or believing, I should say, that Seth Rich could have been in communications with WikiLeaks? There was a federal investigator that was involved on the inside of the case, a person that's very credible. And I'll tell you, let me just say this, Sean. I don't like to suggest things without saying the person's name. But I can't say the person's name because that person would be thrown under the bus. And I can't do that. But this person, we checked him out. We have to check him out. Very credible. He said he laid eyes on the computer and he laid eyes on the case file. And he came across very credible. When you look at that with the totality of everything else that I found in this case, it's very consistent for a person with my experience to begin to think, well, perhaps there were some email communications between Seth and WikiLeaks. Every time I talk with the police department, though, Sean, every time I talk to the police department about the WikiLeaks or the emails, it's automatically shut down. That discussion is automatically shut down.
Well, so we don't know for sure if the FBI or if the D.C. police have any access to these forensics, these emails?
Right. We don't know. We actually have a statement from the FBI telling us to contact the D.C. police. The D.C. police says contact the FBI. Now, which is it? If this is just a murder investigation, first of all, why would the FBI be involved? The only reason the FBI will be involved, just so that the viewers understand, is if this has some degree of national exposure, meaning because maybe it is related to the DNC, and we don't know that. We don't know that for sure. It could have been a botched robbery. But my point is this, Sean, and I've been investigating murders for a while. You have to look at every possibility. You can't just look at one thing and say, well, that has to be it.
Have you ever seen a lot of robberies, which is how they've been looking into this case, where the person has their wallet and their watch after they've been shot and killed in the back?
No, I haven't. Now, that's not to say that that could not happen. But here's the thing, and this is so important. There's been a $125,000 reward out for information pertaining to the death of Seth Rich. Not one person has come forward. Here's one other thing that's going to be startling, and I'm just going to say this right now. I reached out to the police department way back in March when the family first hired me, right, to get involved. I didn't hear anything from the police department for 2 to 3 days. Guess what I learned yesterday from the family of Seth Rich? The police department did not call me back because someone, a high-ranking official at the DNC, check this out, a high-ranking official at the DNC, when I called the police department, they got that information and called the Rich family wanting to know why was I snooping around.
Wouldn't that explain how is it possible that the DNC, when the FBI wanted to look at their computers, was able to bring in their own people? or that the people that ended up getting immunity ended up being able to destroy their laptop computers. Is there any evidence that he might have been disgruntled at the treatment of Bernie Sanders and the unfairness, and that the fix was in to put Hillary in that position, and maybe had evidence of that?
No, I haven't seen any evidence in that regard. The only thing that I have been able to confirm is that there were some problems that Seth was having on his job at the DNC right before he was killed. And the person, listen to this, the person that called the father after I called the police to get information, that's the person that Seth was having problems with at the DNC. So, you know, connect the dots here. It's starting to all come together. So, again, let me just really quickly say this. I don't know for sure. I don't know, as a matter of fact, if the emails went out to the WikiLeaks or anybody else, but it sure appears that way.
Sean Hannity giving the Seth Rich murder a mainstream media voice seems to have emboldened KimDotCom to provide the world with information that he alleged to know regarding the Seth Rich murder. May 19th, KimDotCom tweets, "Still wonder why the DNC refused server access to the FBI to investigate the leaks? Seth Rich ain't Russian." On May 19th, KimDotCom tweeted, "If Congress includes Seth Rich case in their Russia probe, I'll give written testimony with evidence that Seth Rich was WikiLeaks source." As you can imagine, KimDotCom's tweets went viral over the internet, and Sean Hannity took notice. On May 19th, Sean Hannity replied to KimDotCom's tweet, in which KimDotCom said, "If Congress includes Seth Rich case into the Russian probe, I'll give written testimony with evidence that Seth Rich was the WikiLeaks source." Hannity wrote, "You have that evidence? ? KimDotCom replied, "I'm the evidence." Sean Hannity responded, "You are the evidence? Can you explain that in more detail? ? KimDotCom replied, "I knew Seth Rich. I know he was the WikiLeaks source. I was involved. I'm meeting my legal team on Monday. I will issue a statement about Seth Rich on Tuesday. Please be patient. This needs to be done properly." On May 23rd, KimDotCom would release a statement regarding Seth Rich. Seth Rich was a hero. I know that Seth Rich was involved in the DNC leak. I know this because in late 2014, a person contacted me about helping me to start a branch of the Internet Party in the United States. He called himself Panda. I now know that Panda was Seth Rich. Panda advised me that he was working on voter analytics tools and other technologies that the Internet Party may find helpful. I communicated with Panda on a number of topics, including corruption and the influence of corporate money in politics. He wanted to change that from the inside. I was referring to what I knew when I did an interview with Bloomberg in New Zealand in May of 2015. In that interview, I hinted that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks would release information about Hillary Clinton in the upcoming election. The Rich family has reached out to me to ask that I be sensitive to their loss in my public comments. That request is entirely reasonable. I have consulted with my lawyers. I accept that my full statement should be provided to the authorities, and I am prepared to do that so there can be a full investigation. My lawyers will speak with the authorities regarding the proper process. If my evidence is required to be given in the United States, I would be prepared to do so if appropriate arrangements are made. I would need a guarantee from Special Counsel Mueller of the FBI, on behalf of the United States, of safe passage from New Zealand to the United States and back. In the coming days, we will be communicating with the appropriate authorities to make necessary arrangements. In the meantime, I will make no further comment. On May 29th, KimDotCom tweeted a letter from his lawyers to the U.S. Department of Justice Special Counsel Robert Mueller. "This letter is the prudent process to follow. I need to protect my family and myself. I'll keep you posted about the developments. #SethRich. KimDotCom would go on to have his special counsel send a letter to Robert Mueller of the FBI. May 30th, KimDotCom approaches special counsel, investigating interference with the 2016 United States presidential election regarding evidence. In accordance with his previous statement on this matter, KimDotCom solicitors in New Zealand have today sent the following letter to Robert Mueller, special counsel appointed to investigate interference with the 2016 United States presidential election and related matters. We act for Kim.com in New Zealand. We are writing you in your capacity as special counsel appointed to carry out the above investigation pursuant to Order 3915-2017. Mr.com has evidence that he considers relevant to the investigation. The purpose of this letter is to confirm that, subject to appropriate arrangements being made and his constitutional rights being preserved, Mr.com is willing to provide this evidence to the investigation. He has instructed us to make this approach to initiate the necessary dialogue as to required arrangements. As you may be aware, Mr.com in New Zealand, since 2012, the United States has been seeking his extradition to face a criminal prosecution arising from his involvement in the Mega Upload group of companies. Presently, Mr.com is on bail while he exercises his rights under New Zealand law to resist extradition. Mr.com emphatically denies the allegations. In summary, Kim.com's lawyers reached out to Department of Justice Special Counsel Robert Mueller, indicating that Kim.com is willing to come to the United States to testify in the Russiagate investigation, as Mueller was brought on to investigate connections between the Trump administration and Russia. Kim.com is willing to do so as long as he's guaranteed safe passage to and from the United States and back to New Zealand. I have included the link to Kim.com's full letter to the FBI in the references below. It appears as all this went on, WikiLeaks founder and CEO Julian Assange decided to chime in on the allegations being made by Kim.com. On May 21st, 2017, Julian Assange tweeted, "WikiLeaks has never disclosed a source. Sources sometimes talk to other parties, but identities never emerge from WikiLeaks. Hashtag Seth Rich." It appears that Julian Assange was trying to tell the world that what Kim.com is saying is accurate. In response, the Washington Post would use the family to make a hit piece against Kim.com. In the hit piece, Kim.com is accused of attempting to hack Seth Rich's emails and plant fake evidence. Kim.com would release a multiple-page public rebuttal to the Washington Post story and to the family. The article in the Washington Post and Kim.com's rebuttal can both be found in the references below. I would get into them, but they're very lengthy and technical. In response to the Washington Post hit piece on Kim.com, people on the internet started pointing to an interview Kim.com did in May of 2015, 14 months before Seth Rich was murdered. Let's take a look.
What about Julian Assange? What's your relationship with him?
So what Julian Assange is doing, he's putting a spotlight on all these secrets.
How often do you talk to him?
Why is that important to you?
I'm curious.
Look, I like these guys, you know. I look up to them. I think they are very brave. They're going through a very hard time, you know, and they chose to do that for the betterment of all of us. So, yeah, I love to talk to them.
So, you said you were going to bring the internet party to the U.S. in 2016.
Yeah.
Why? What's your goal?
Well, because I think there's a big group of people out there that disagree with what's going on, you know. They want to have their privacy back. They want to have internet freedom.
You tweeted that you were going to be Hillary's worst nightmare in 2016. How so?
Well, I have to say it's probably more Julian. But I'm aware of some of the things that are going to be roadblocks for her. So, you know, if I can provide some transparency with these people and make them part of what the Internet Party stands for, then, you know, I will be happy to do that.
You're saying Julian Assange is going to be Hillary's worst nightmare in 2016.
I think so, yeah.
How so?
Well, he has access to information.
What information?
I don't know the specifics.
Why Hillary in particular?
Well, Hillary hates Julian. She is just an adversary of, I think, internet freedom.
And she signed your extradition request?
Yeah.
So you have a bone to pick with her?
You know, the crazy thing is, I actually like Hillary. I like Obama. It's just so crazy that all of this happened.
In summary, internet entrepreneur and international fugitive Kim.com tweeted out that he knew Seth Rich, that he knows Seth Rich was in fact the DNC leaks WikiLeaks source, and that he has evidence. He sent a letter to Special Investigator Robert Mueller that he is willing to come to the United States and testify that Seth Rich was in fact the source of the DNC leaks. Robert Mueller has been appointed by the Department of Justice to investigate any connections between the Trump administration and Russia, and any connections between Russia and hacking of the 2016 American presidential elections. If what KimDotCom is saying is true, the entire narrative that Russia was involved in fixing American elections, that Russia was involved in collusion with the Trump administration, would be completely destroyed. If Robert Mueller is going to do an accurate investigation, he has no choice but to grant KimDotCom his wish and provide him safe passage to the United States to testify in front of Congress under oath what he knows regarding Seth Rich. That is, if Robert Mueller is going to do an accurate and full investigation. What happens next is up to the FBI. Julian Assange, this entire time, has implied that Seth Rich was in fact the WikiLeaks source, and he seems to be corroborating what KimDotCom is saying now. I don't know where this is going to go, but I know if KimDotCom is never brought to America to testify, then a real investigation never took place. Did you like this video? I hope that you did, and I hope that you like my other videos about Seth Rich. I love America, but more than America, I love the idea of America. I love the idea that people can be free, that rather than be ruled, people themselves could be the rulers, and that when power is out of line, people can hold that power accountable. It's a beautiful idea. Free speech, the right to bear arms, no taxes. But that hasn't been my experience in my life, and I found that power has been very corrupt and out of control. And I'm going to live every day from this point forward of my life fighting power, fighting for the people. But I need your help. I just set up a Patreon account. If you would be kind enough to go onto my Patreon account and donate as much as $1 a month would make a huge difference for freeing up my time so that I have more time to make videos and do research and expose corruption. Together, you can help me change the world. I hope you do. Thank you.